number of years ago, I was watching From the Wild, a beautiful show about hunting, foraging, and food when I first learned about Jeff Senger. He struck me as a highly articulate and unapologetically passionate person. I'm very excited to have him here with me today on The Wild Kitchen. Thank you for being here, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
You know, we were texting a little bit and I'm like, oh, damn, I got to get Jeff on here. I think when Travis, for people that haven't listened to your podcast with Travis on the Silvercore podcast, I know I kind of sat back jealously a little bit. I'm like, oh, damn, I wish I could talk to Jeff. I get kind of fired up hearing other people that are passionate about hunting and food and butchery and all these things. And so it's very cool to have you here today. And speaking of passion, for anyone that wants to check out a cool Instagram feed, go to yours. My goodness, you are, I think unapologetic is the best way to put it. Like, you don't hide things from people. You're like, this is what reality is, and this is what it looks like. And you really just kind of like put it out there for people to see.
Yeah, for sure. In the beginning, after transitioning away from accounting and buying a slaughterhouse in 2010, I met with my soon-to-be partner, Kevin Kosawan, and we hung out and did a lot of hunting from the wild, and that's sort of what you referenced, and so part of me lives in the world of wild and wild food and filmmaking and in that sort of context. And Kevin and I had lots of late night conversations about what of the process of hunting animals and doing the outdoor stuff. What should we show? What we show, what we share, and how we approach the harvesting of live creatures in order to create food. And then sort of on the side, my full-time gig was learning how to operate and run this the slaughterhouse that we bought on kind of it was a bit of a whim. It was kind of a dare. Was working as an accountant, and I thought, I'm tired of counting people's money for them and working with a lot of incompetent people in industry. And so I had this sort of life shift. Again, I was about 32. My wife and I had transitioned to moving rurally from living in the city, but we were really passionate about food, and that's sort of where the Wild Kitchen transition, or what do we call this? Like an overlap, right? So there's food and there's wild hunting. But my wife and I loved cooking. We bought this farm in 2006, and left Calgary at the time. Started producing our own food and having kids, and realized the importance of the quality of what goes into the food matters. How the food is produced affects flavor, quality, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of dared myself to buy a small business after getting tired of the daily routine of working for pulp and paper and power and utility kind of sorts of accounting controllership roles. And this small slaughterhouse was up for sale in our community. I had participated in local economic development kind of work, and we knew that if our this town of Sangudo, near where our farm is, if it lost that one piece of infrastructure, it would affect all of the local area hobby farmers and ranchers and the larger, medium and large size producers, because they wouldn't be able to take their animals to get processed anywhere near as close as the plant in Sangudo. So we kind of put together this plan, and then it was funny because we built a community financing model around acquiring the slaughterhouse, and there's 15 or 20 of us in the room, small producers, farmers and ranchers, and just people in the community that didn't want to see Sangudo sort of disappear off the map. And they said, yeah, well, that's a great slaughterhouse. We kind of made a deal with the existing owner, who is an old man in his 70s, who is notoriously crotchety. And the community said, yeah, but who's going to run it? Like, who's going to actually do the work? And it was one of those, all the other community economic development people took a step back, and myself and this other guy were kind of like, we looked at each other and thought, well, probably us. Like, we could do it. We're ready for career change. And so that entered into the world of me immersing into meat in the year 2010.
So if it was like the local bakery in town, you could just as easily have been here being like, yeah, I'm Sangudo Bakery. I'm the one that, continued on in this path, or was there something specific about the slaughterhouse that made it easier for you to take that leap?
Yeah, I think that's where being like I call myself semi-literate, like having read some books
Yeah.
and having a profound curiosity about about nature and about
Mm.
food meant that I read some books and followed some people online that were sort of key thinkers in the industry. Michael Pollan sort of pops into mind, and then a bunch of meat curing books, both like old traditional ones and more modern books about meat curing and putting up game. Um, and I mean, like, I'd been hunting since I was old enough to follow my dad around with a 22. Uh, he, although we lived in the city, he hunted for 2 or 3 weeks every fall, and I really liked that time of year and was excited to do. As a kid, I was doing butchery in the garage with all the old guys, chain smoking and cutting moose and deer in the garage. Um, so I had that sort of early exposure, and then a kind of a deep interest peaked, and then this absolutely weird business slaughterhouse comes for sale in my community. The community kind of needs it, and I put together some spreadsheets, and I'm like, this could probably make a living for a person who no longer has to. I didn't have to commute. I was commuting into Whitecourt from our farm, which was kind of 40 minutes each way. I'm like, I could probably run that and more deeply explore my curiosity and not just preparing foods and especially peculiar foods like fermented sausage or dry cured whole muscle pork, that kind of stuff. Beef brazola. Those were all curiosities I was fooling around with moose and deer and bear and waterfowl at home and on the farm. But then, conventional animals, livestock animals, and we took a dip. Our gateway livestock on the farm were laying hens, and the laying hen is like a miracle because the nature of their eggs that they lay change. They're significantly different and immediately different compared with the grocery store eggs. And they can change daily depending on what the hen is eating. And so we thought, well, if we can see this big a change when we feed some greens to the chickens, or the chickens are out on green grass or eating grasshoppers or whatever, then and those eggs change that much, then does that also apply to basically every other animal-based food? And the answer is yeah, and profoundly.
Is it as immediate as a chicken, or are you seeing,
No,
longer term? Yeah.
I think, less. The
Mm.
production cycle for conventional animals came into question and became a curiosity that, let's say, a barn raised pig in conventional hog raising facilities, which are appalling. The more I learned about it, the more turned off or conventional pork I got. Um, but that might be a 6 month turnaround from farrow to fork. A pig goes from being born to being eaten in about 6 months. Beef might be, man, like 12 to 24 months, and that's in a conventional system where they're really really pushed. And so meeting producers through the slaughterhouse, doing custom work for local area producers and farmers, we got to see the insides of 10 or 15 red meat animals every week that I was killing humanely in a loving way. I'd rock them to sleep in my big brown arms. I say that you carry them and sing to them. But the most impact that a person can have in the in society that consumes meat is probably in meat production. I meet a lot of people that say at parties, and they say, "Oh, I'm a vegan," and I'm like, "That's fantastic. You should be a vegan." Because 99.99% of meat comes from absolute catastrophic nightmare of production conditions and horrible treatment of animals, even when they're doing the best. And the folks that run those, that work in those, the machines that bring us meat, that work in the value chain, the meat value chain, even though they're trying to do their best, at volume when profit comes first, multinational corporations produce a product that is food like and it's meat like, but compared to the meat that we produce slowly and human at sort of a human level, or a very slow and unprofitable level, or oftentimes low margin and unprofitable. Um, Very different product.
There's so many questions I have for you. One of the big things I was curious about was how much control or how much power the someone like yourself has to the end product. Like if you have, like, I've seen some of the pictures of the, like, the beef, that especially the Wagyu beef that you have that's coming in, or the Wagyu beef cross that comes in, and you're just like, oh my God, like something like that is like the perfect food for a chef because you don't mess with it. Like, you have the perfect product and you just like treat it as simply as possible. But how much power do you actually have when slaughtering and butchering an animal to improve upon a less than perfect specimen that comes across your floor?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Yeah, we talk about. I coined the phrase. It comes from my oil and gas accounting, but there's upstream, midstream, and downstream,
Yeah.
and so there are those three stages in the meat product life cycle or the value chain. Upstream would be in the case of beef, cow calf operation. The calves leave to go to, they get weaned and they go to a feed situation, and that can all happen on the same farm. But and Heather and I, my wife and I, and our kids have had cattle for since '06 maybe or '08. Like, so I guess that's we're 10, 12 years of I mean 4 to 6 cattle. I think we're up to 17 as a max, and then shrunk back down, and we have 4 on the farm right now. But so we've been experimenting and exploring on our just our little quarter section, playing with the upstream part. And so how does animal treatment, animal feed, and the life cycle affect the animals as they grow from 0 months to 20, 24 months or 30 months? And then they come into the slaughterhouse, and I control, like, as the killer for the almost all, maybe 18 months. I took off, but this is year 16 of slaughter. So I've been the kill guy, putting bullets or captive bolt stun rods into animals' heads for 16 years. And then the cutter and sausage guy. So we kind of, the company's a little bigger now, so I don't do I kept my favorite part, which was the slaughter job. With our kids, the slaughter daughters, they were the best team of men that have ever worked a kill floor.
Sounds about right.
Have been my kids, yeah. A lot of young men are a little rammy, and but the slaughter daughters have been amazing. 2 of them are in BC now, and one's in Edmonton going to school, and we just have the youngest slaughter daughter. So we're making a plan to transition away from just the kids working on the kill floor. And then the downstream would be, what do you do after the animal's been killed, gutted, split skin, and hung? How does that affect the characteristics of the meat and meat quality? And then beyond downstream, it's kind of like speaking to customers and saying, what attributes are important to you in the meat that the value chain produces?
Yeah.
What attributes are important to you? And something like Wagyu is a good example of a meat that's so heavily marbled. That's what it's shooting for, is to be a heavily marbled, tender meat that's rich and full of flavor. That's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's just one stream of the animals that we process. And it suits a very specific market demand. One of the things I love the most about those heavily marbled and I want to say genetically engineered, but not with genetic engineering, with just selectively bred in order to store fat in muscle. That's what Wagyu beef are famous for. It makes a product that's very hard to screw up when you're cooking.
There you go.
It's difficult to overcook, and we like to eat things medium rare or rare, so we don't overcook it to begin with. But because there's so much intermuscular fat in a breed like that, you almost always have a positive result. And taking a dip into the retail side of the meat business with Modest Meats in Edmonton, a 2-year adventure that ended in basically failure. It's closed now, but it was interesting because I worked there and dealt directly with customers and listened to what they had to say about what was important to them. So Wagyu scratches this itch for a particular demographic of meat aficionados, but just as relevant would be an all grass-fed beef, which is my specific favorite. They're really expensive to produce. Typically, those animals are over 30 months, like over
Mm.
approaching 3 years of age. They get one extra summer on green grass, and the most beefy flavor comes from that I've experienced over
Yeah.
these 16 years have been beef that have been eating rapidly growing high sugar grass in June, slaughtered in June.
Yeah.
That's where the flavor lives. If people are after flavor, and they can marble as well. Beef can marble on grass. They just need an extra year to do it and sort of the right genetics.
Yeah.
But that's where flavor lives. So that's another niche market that we can fill because I can sort through animals that come through on the rail like a library, and then select um, select the book that best meets the need of the end user, of the family that wants to eat that. So they can say, I need something that is certified organic, or I need something that's ultra lean because I work out. So maybe I want a bison, like a lean bison, or an animal that's a bull, tend to come in a lot leaner. And then there are people that want something easy to cook or the best beef in the world, and that's typically stuff that grades prime or better, like prime and into the Wagyu scale of grading.
Is there an internal fight in you where you're like, this is what the customer says they want? Like I want a nice, lean loin of pork and I'm going to cook it well done. And this is how my mom ate it. And like, this is what I'm used to. And you're like, well, I think I'd like to introduce you to something else. Like, do you give the customer what they want, or do you fight and kind of push them to explore new things from your
Oh
expertise?
yeah. In the retail world, both one of the fellows we work with at North Country Meats, that's operating a booming retail. We do all of his killing for him, and uh, as our retail friend, retail partner, and when I was working at our own little experiment at Modest Meats, we absolutely push people to try cuts that would be, especially in the price that we're at today. So for those people that don't know, it's 2025, and the market price of cattle in North America are higher than it's ever been in the history of Earth, and that comes from a series of droughts, unexpected volatility in climate, and an aging population of ranchers and farmers. So people retiring and dying on the farm, and then their families selling out the herd and selling the land off to corporate farmers. That something that's a lot more predictable is in our area is grain farming, and so a lot of stuff that had been pasture land is now chemically farmed grain. A lot of transition into grain farming. So there are fewer beef and the prices are very high. So we in the retail world, people come in and they heard it on TV or they saw it growing up that, like you said, a well done tenderloin is the best cut of meat out of beef. You guys
Mm.
got tenderloin? You guys got tenderloin? And as butchers, we laugh and say that is a lean cut that has the least beef flavor of the entire animal. So tenderloin, easy to sell, but not my pick. We would turn people on to bavettes and skirt steaks and hanging tenderloin or butcher's tenderloin, which are fun. A lot of cuts out of the shoulder that we sort of discovered in books and wanting to read books and learn more about the craft over the years. So Denvers and petite tenders, flat irons come out of the shoulder, which the flat iron is the second most tender steak on the entire animal. And then also, like I was saying earlier, just across how the animal is handled in terms of feed, age, gender. Sometimes gender really affects. A bull is not the same as a steer. So a steer is a castrated bull. A heifer is not the same as a cow. You can feel the muscle rigidity in animals as you're butchering them. Like with experience, it's so obvious. Like this one's gonna be like ground up car tires. And it's so funny because growing up, we always put in for bull moose tags. And growing up, I hated eating moose unless it was in sausage because it was ground up car tires. It was dry, lean. Because the men of my previous generation, previous to me, were like the bigger the antlers, the better the trophy. And then Kevin Kossawan and I threw From the Wild, exploring uh, wild food through a culinary approach, a culinary lens. And he and I started shooting antlerless whitetail deer at a young age. Like if you have a chance to shoot a doe or its fawn, we were shooting the fawn because the eating experience was so much better than eating an old buck in rut.
It's funny you say that because Trav and I were just in Sweden, and their perspective on hunting is like it's like the polar opposite of ours. Like here, you shoot well. If you're going to post it on social media, you're showing people that you shot the animal with the biggest antlers or horns or whatever it is. There, they're like, no, from a conservation perspective, why are you shooting those breeding animals? Like you let those go, you let them breed. All those qualities are kind of come out in the next generation of animals. They're shooting like if I know there's a lot of invasive like in pigs and things like that, so it's slightly different. But like they're shooting just like some of these animals still have spots on them. And you're like, oh, like you're not used to it. But my goodness, the meat they eat, and everybody eats wild meat over there. It's an accepted practice. Hunting is not like it's viewed very differently over there. And it's more conservation minded. That's how they see it. You got to shoot the small ones and the females because you want to let the big males go, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
yeah, in us exploring culinary, if you look at the age of domestic livestock when they're slaughtered, from chickens and turkeys to pigs and beef, they're all absolutely just they're just
Just out of
over
diapers.
just out of diapers, just
Yeah.
into adolescence,
Yeah.
and that's because meat in almost all animals does toughen up as they get older. So in our work with we do a lot of custom work where a reseller will bring in half a dozen beef in the fall, and then we slaughter them, and they're selling them at farmers markets or direct to family in the city. That's always been a big part of our business, at least 50%. And interesting, just the conversation you kind of triggered a memory, and that's that we do get upset. I mean, when a customer wants a tenderloin, we encourage them to try other cuts, and then we sell them a tenderloin. There's some people that are cut curious and species curious or breed curious, but others that just aren't. There's no budging them. But also as a midstream kind of operator, we hate when we see resellers bringing in animals that aren't prime or that aren't in a high grade, but because big multinationals keep prices down, a lot of times those producers have no choice but present their beef as something that oftentimes it just isn't. So they're unable to be objective about their own meat and how it scores or how it grades, because they're selling themselves. They're selling the story of themselves as a small farmer that can sometimes produce out of this world beef, and then oftentimes it doesn't. So we'll see the cut instructions for the buyer, and they want we'll have a good fat finished beef on the rail is approaching 1,000 pounds of hot hanging rail weight. And hobby producers are people that are going to get rich quick by owning a few acres and producing beef in Alberta, living the Alberta dream. They'll produce animals that come in at 300 to 600 pounds on the rail, which is often less than half the size of a beef that's fully finished. And then they'll be selling this premium product at market, and they want all their ribeyes. They want 40-ounce ribeye steaks cut 2 inches thick, and they're kind of the diameter of a toonie. Because they're kind of missing the boat or not doing the book work that producers should be doing, that especially direct selling, in order to read about meat attributes and then fairly evaluate their product against the ideal, to then say, okay, we are producing that, we're meeting that standard, or we're not. So a lot of it's sort of a tough position to be kind of the middle guy, where the customer comes to pick up the beef that this producer produced and sold it to them as this amazing thing, and then the eating experience is kind of horrible because it was a bull and they failed to castrate it, and you're like, man, it's a tough position to be in, but.
Yeah, as a consumer, it's challenging. You want to support, and I know our family, 99% of the meat we consume is wild. When it's not wild, we buy it through friends or people we know and we trust that raise their own meat. But there was definitely like quite the steep learning curve. And like, I remember buying these chickens from a woman from Facebook when we first had kids. I'm like, I'm got to get good meat for our kids. I'm not going to buy chicken from Costco or Safeway or whatever, right? So I go buy it from this woman. She has this whole story about what her chickens are like. I go pick them up, and I swear to God, they must have been like 10 pounds a piece. They were like the biggest, oldest stewing hens I've ever seen in my life. You couldn't like they were good for a pot to make chicken stock, and that was it. But she sold them as like, oh, these are beautiful chickens, and blah 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 blah, and this whole story. But like, you couldn't eat them. They were like boiled boots, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
And it was, and that's the thing. Like we've got our trusted suppliers for beef, but that's after going through a few where it was like, I don't know, this just it's not what I had hoped, right?
yep.
So you got to go through it.
I think sometimes knowing the processor, like becoming friends with the midstream guy, and like I'm indifferent, and but I'll tell the truth about this producer had a good year last year, kind of like a vintage of wine, and we have friends that produce wine in the Okanagan, and learned a thing or two about there's the telling the story and selling the story about this vintage of this varietal and where it was grown and how it was grown this year. But then also, I think that the wine community is better at accepting when this year's vintage isn't up to snuff. You
Yeah,
know,
totally.
and sometimes the buyer, I'm the wine buyer, or sort of the middleman, can say, while last year's beef for sure from this customer did meet your check boxes in the categories that are important to you, I
Mm,
don't believe those beef are going to meet those check boxes this year, and here's why.
yeah,
Maybe you want to go with this producer. And so I think that the butcher, and the butcher is an important part of the food community because they can objectively evaluate kind of what's coming in and what's going out.
mm,
Whereas in its adolescence, the food culture of the West of Canada, basically of the West of Western Canada and the United States, have kind of been hornswoggled by JBS Cargill and the monoculture monocrop
yeah,
folks. That don't want the meat world and the meat buying public to think of beef as regional specialties, as produced by different farms, and that each one has a different flavor based on its varietal, as it were, its terroir. Early on, Heather and I went to a conference in Turin, Italy, put on by Slow Food International, called Terra Madre. Yeah, and just getting over to Europe and really immersing in the food culture that in an older food culture, a more established food culture, you're like, my God, how come we're not? How come there isn't an incentive, kind of, or how come folks back home in Alberta are not aware of sort of the varietal and the nature, or the subtle differences and the nuances of meat
mm,
in the grocery store? It's because just look at the grocery stores. Like they're questing after their next billion, and so if you think about that, they need to make things as homogenous and commodity. They have to commodify food, and commodify food requires to commodify life, and
yeah.
then they commodify animals, and that's kind of a dirty mess that you end up with consistently low quality, high profit meat rather than the opposite.
I struggle, quite honestly, really struggle finding a good butcher around us. I find that I get very frustrated. I am willing to spend a lot of money to get something good. And when I go to the butcher and I get into an argument with them about what suet is, I like I just I I'm like, why am I arguing with you about suet? I need suet. I have to make like I'm making my mincemeat pies. They have to have suet, and you're going and you're like cutting the fat off the back of a roast. I'm like, that's not suet. Like if you don't have it, that's fine. But they're bringing in packages cryovac'd, like big, like this
Oh,
is,
totally.
and it's
Yeah.
not what I'm looking for, right? Like I can go to a major supermarket and get that and get it cheaper, but they're putting lipstick on a pig at a lot of the butcher shops we have.
Yeah, I think that that's sort of the quiet scandal, that people that dig just beneath, or scratch beneath the surface. Not all retail meat shops or retail meat departments are created equal. There's a lot of greenwashing, and we have friends in the States that are a little more. A little ahead of Canada, and they realize that some really big brands that were carried by some really big in some really big retail chains were exactly as you say. They're buying box meat, and they're peeling the plastic bag off it, and they're calling themselves butchers. And this is interesting because as a slaughterist, from live animal to steaks and processed meats like sausages and jerky and stuff like that. Um, I was offended by people in retail stores that basically repackage stuff that's out of the federally inspected meat system. And they repackage it and then they call themselves butchers. And our derogatory term that evolved over time for those folks are portioners. And
That's 100% what it is.
they buy what is like a loaf of bread. So that's a deboned strip loin, and then they cut it into slices. They're not baking the bread. In the case of strip loin, they're not involved with any step other than taking the plastic bag off of it and then cutting it into slices for you. And that's, unfortunately, that's a lot of how butcher shops make their money. Is they have predictable, commodified, consistent and homogeneous product coming in from a federal plant that has worked hard to homogenize the stream, and then they're selling at a premium price, even though that meat is exactly what you'd get at the grocery store, but maybe they buy a higher percentage of AAA graded. But it's exactly the same product that you're getting at your grocery store, but just kind of green washed or like artisanal washed as something special, and it's unfortunate. But because it's such a tight margin business, we're not selling Mercedes with higher margin. I think a lot of the financial reality is sort of that education piece, so the consumer knows what's up. But a point I wanted to make too is the education of retail butchers has kind of also been infiltrated by big business. We've hired kids that have gone to a technical college called NAIT or SAIT in Alberta, in Calgary and Edmonton, Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, that have retail meat cutting programs. And also Olds College has a retail meat cutting program that includes some kill floor stuff. So we've had people work for us over the years from all of those programs, and the programs are kind of funded by big agra, big food and big meat. And so the kids have seen equipment that we at a small provincially inspected abattoir like ours could never afford in a million years. They have x-ray machines, and they're kind of training a fleet of meat cutters to be portioners working for large grocery chains. Because that's where most of the jobs are, to be fair. That is where most of the jobs are, is just working in Costco meat department. And those kids, oftentimes, if they didn't read the sticker on the box, they couldn't look at the cut and tell you where on the animal it came from. So if there was a mislabeling issue, they would sell strip loin as outside rounds because they had no idea and didn't have the time in the course to sort of fall in love with the art of the practice of meat cutting. They're kind of just producing store clerks that are portioners.
So what's the solution there? Did they go to Italy, or they come work for you, or
they all come work for me? No thanks. No, thank you. I think that improving the education system really matters. And in order to do that, you probably have to get corporate dollars out of supporting the technical colleges.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do because they love their money and they love their $250,000 deboning machines. And
100%.
So doing it, I think so. It does exist in Europe. So kids doing stages in butcher shops and retail meat outfits in Europe and in the Eastern United States. There was a guy I met from Beast and Cleaver in Portland called Dylan, and he was excellent. So people that sort of think alike and believe in the artistry of butcher, and are kids who are literate and want to, like, they have passion and the ability to read books and on topics of meat and meat cutting and curing. Those are sort of good indications that kid isn't going to substitute a strip loin for an outside round.
Fair.
Yeah,
it's like anything, right? You're in it because you love it. You have a passion for it. You're probably going to make good choices because you care, right?
That's that, and it's a struggle. Like our initial years, Heather was subsidizing the meat shop with my wife's a teacher, and we were subsidizing in all different ways just to stay, like, to keep afloat, because again, people can't wear what they eat on their sleeve. So sometimes when there's an economic downturn, the first part of their budget to get cut probably be eating out, restaurants, vacations, and then paying extra for a higher quality food isn't something that you can show off. Whereas Rolexes and cars are things that you can show off. Also, we don't have payment plans on beef. Maybe that's what we're missing.
There you go.
Is
You got to do that. What I can't Klarna or whatever on your website where people can pay it off. Like,
That's right. No money down.
yeah, $3 a day.
Easy monthly payments
Yeah.
on an attributed beef.
Have a calculation for reduced chance of colon cancer and like all the health benefits that are getting put into their life because they're eating good food.
That's a
Right?
really good point. And I mean, like that's when our family selects what it is we're going to eat or what it is we're going to plant in our garden or whether our garden is worth it. You do have to come at it not from the dollars, not from a dollars perspective, not when it affects your health. It's better to come at it from a health perspective. And what am I getting in addition to this spinach when I buy it from the store? And then when I eat a carrot out of
Absolutely.
our garden, it's just a carrot.
Yeah.
But when I get a carrot from the store, it's different. It's a carrot plus other stuff that oftentimes doesn't have to be on the label. And meat is exactly the same. When we have a crisis at home, like we're out of ground beef or we're out of food, I will choose not to buy it from the grocery store. Again, back to the folks telling me they're vegan or vegetarian, and I say, yeah, I would be too. We would rather not eat meat than buy something from the federal system because of being in the industry as long as we have. We understand the corners that can be cut, and the easy way to make money in meat is basically is morally not great. It certainly helps the bottom line, but it's not morally great, and it doesn't improve food quality or lower the risk of you getting sick from eating a lot of the products that are produced by the kind of the chemical food industry, I would call it.
Well, I mean, it brings to mind the recent thing in the news, and I I don't even know if it was real, but it was circling around quite a bit about the Campbell's executive that got recorded saying that their meat and their chicken noodle soup is 3D printed. Did you hear about this?
I had not, but that's sounds
Yeah.
like an expensive way to get meat. But
I don't know. Some disgruntled employee apparently recorded his boss screaming at him about how crappy their soup is and how he wouldn't eat it or feed it to his family, and they all know it's 3D printed meat or yeah. It's
well,
it's
it brings
horrifying.
up an interesting, yeah. Like I mean, I don't know, man. If 3D printed meat was less expensive, but I don't know in any planet how that would be. But very interesting about the world of soup and secondary and byproduct foods. Which is that this is an interesting quote I'm going to try that I've invented in my own. The voice in my head has created this thought a long time ago, but it was the more sophisticated food chemical science gets, the lower grade meats are included in everyday products that you're used to eating from childhood. So what used to be floor sweepings, like what used to be like substandard cuts would go into hot dogs and bologna. And then as chemical science and agri-food chemical science advanced, lower and lower quality bits and pieces could be included in the secondary processed sort of products. So that what used to be floor sweepings or what used to be dog food, what used to be floor sweepings is now that's fair game for hot dogs because science makes chicken and turkey skin quite edible. And I've done some experiments where for just trials, kind of to be funny and kind of to explore where food comes from. I did an all chicken skin hot dog. It was chicken and turkey skin, like 10% meat. And then I did a blind taste test for our staff when I was feeling particularly crafty. And I said, which hot dog is the best hot dog? And they're like, that one for sure. It's just like it's a Ballpark Frank. That's a Costco dog or whatever. And I'm like, gross. I'll show you a pile of what was included with like some small batch chemicals that made that protein bind to the fat to make a delicious rubbery hot dog. And I'm like, I can never eat chicken dogs from the store again. We've ruined a lot of foods that way.
Well, it brings to question what is food, right? Like, I think there's a time when, like, you look at different cultures and the food they eat and the term living high on the hog, right? Like the rich people got to eat higher on the chain of the pig and the poor people ate the guts and like all the offal, right?
Totally.
And through that, they had to be creative and they had to cook it intelligently and usually over a long time with spices and flavors and those foods are coming back and like I mean, you look at oxtail, like it's like $50 a pound or something stupid like that. Like it's one of my favorite cuts of meat on the beef, but it's so expensive because there's only one tail and it's become trendy now. People love it. But it's different than taking subpar quality food and things that people really shouldn't eat if they knew what was going into their food. That's a very different story, right? Like you said, floor sweepings and food that's garbage and should be fed to dogs. And we're processing it so much that you can't even tell what it is. You can't tell if it's chicken or beaks or whatever, right? There's enough salt in it. People are like, "Oh, this is so good," you know.
Yeah, and you touched on so many points that get me excited. And the North American palate, sort of designed, intentionally designed to trigger on sugar, salt, and fat, and that's kind of it. So we raised four daughters, and we wanted them to explore food, and so we put things in front of them that would challenge their traditional North American palates. So they definitely ate ketchup chips and Hawkins cheesies, but then they had blue cheese and gorgonzola and dry cured fermented meats. Growing up, we had a family milk cow, and we all shook a mason jar full of cream to make butter, and all of those sort of miracles of food transformation meant that they can speak, somewhat intelligently, like I can, just barely. We're just barely literate in the world of food. After a 16-year dip for me and their entire lives, they know where good food comes from, and they know what you kind of want to avoid whenever possible. Particularly the non-food ingredients that are included in industrial low quality food, and that includes whole meat muscle. And the way that they're processed. So boneless, skinless chicken breasts is a misnomer about that's the most healthy thing that you can buy. I have a friend that was into bodybuilding, and he does competition weightlifting and stuff. And he's like, boneless, skinless chicken breasts. And I'm like, we call them boneless, skinless tumors. Because a chicken that grows that fast is basically growing faster than a cancerous tumor. And then when they're processed, those chicken breasts go into a cold water bath where the muscle fiber drinks up the slurry of water and other things that are in that cold water bath. Oftentimes, when you're processing a lot of chickens very quickly, like at a federal plant that's doing 1 million chickens an hour, things that you don't want in that cold water bath get in there, like chicken feces. So that's in the water bath, and your chicken breast muscle fiber is being chilled in that water and ice bath, and it's drinking up some of those feces. So big industry says, well, we want to avoid getting feces in the bath, but we don't want to slow down the lines, so we can just add a chemical to the bath, kind of like chlorine in a swimming pool.
Oh, awesome.
That's my story that turned off my brother-in-law from eating chicken breast. It's like,
oh my God.
Once you accept that people shit in swimming pools, if you then there's only a few options. Don't use the swimming pool, or chemically inoculate the swimming pool and just accept there's a certain amount of feces in the swimming pool. And producing for profit first, what did you think they would do? They need to maximize shareholder return. They're not, the goal of a massive meat production company. You can read their mission statement if you read between the lines. Anyway, it doesn't say to make the most nutritious, delicious food that has ever existed on the planet, and at an order of magnitude that's 100 times more nutritious and delicious than in the 1600s. Said no food company ever. Under our current market system for producing and distributing food. Although you and your garden have, every exploratory, chicken rancher that has a laying hen or six, or asparagus grower in their backyard garden, or wild blueberry picker says, this wild blueberry is the most pronounced blueberry flavor I've ever dreamt of or imagined in a blueberry. And then you go to the Whole Foods store, you buy organic blueberries, and they're as big as eyeballs.
Yeah.
And you pop it in your mouth, and what is this? It has a texture. Even the organic ones, they're grown at an industrial scale and kind of pumped with water. Whereas in different years, from a history of foraging, you would say, well, it's a particularly dry year, so there are going to be fewer wild strawberries, but they're going to be so flavorful. Whereas the Southern California or Mexican produced strawberry, or wherever Peru, strawberries from Peru are always consistently homogeneous. It's a commodified food, and that exists all the way through from honey nut cornflakes to milk. The goal is to homogenize it. That is to make it exactly the same, independent of where it came from and independent of what year. Was it a dry year or heavy rainfall year? It's all supposed to be the same.
And it's supposed to be beautiful, right? Like our food is always beautiful, which circling back again to your Instagram feed, your Instagram feed is beautiful, but for people that know what they're looking at, it's like it's blood on the killing floor, right? Like you're shining a light, no filters. I don't know, maybe you use filters on it, but like unfiltered, right? Like
Right.
this is what death is. Like you guys need, if you're gonna eat beef, you need to understand this is the truth of it. And I read that you allow people to come in to actually view what it's, the situation on the floor.
Yeah, once you've processed as many animals as I have, and it's every day comes with a weight and a gravity. Um, and it's a lot to carry around as a murderer. That's my job, and I take it really seriously. And I want the animals to not know what's going on. They're confused and then at ease. That's the whole goal. Confused and at ease. To some extent, for my daughters and I, or the people that work the kill floor and I, it's kind of like shucking corn that twist, snap, crack, and throw that part over here and throw this part over there. But yeah, whenever we get the chance, we would, and we find someone who is food oriented and food curious. We've had chefs that we delivered to for years say, could I come and watch on the kill floor to see how it happens? And I'm like, you can come to the kill floor, and if you're comfortable handling a firearm or a captive bolt stunner, you can kill an animal. I'll show you what to do. We'll make sure that we're de-risking that activity. As Kevin Costwell and I found in filming and shooting from the wild, that you could change someone's life and their understanding of the relationship with food and nature by taking them on a camping trip and shooting their first whitetail, or shooting a grouse. That we'd have emotional and mental, unstaged and unscripted mental collapses where people are bawling their eyes out. Not even because of the sadness maybe of taking a life, but that's partly there too. But that's sort of the tsunami of emotion about death, and then like realizing, oh my God, every Big Mac I've ever had started out there, every chicken McNugget that's unrecognizable in its form, or like Lifesavers or anything with gelatin, and you're like every capsule,
Oh God.
every vegan
Don't tell them
capsule.
about gelatin.
Yeah, gelatin is grossly in a lot of things, and that comes from a horribly ugly process to get nice, clean, shiny lip balm. Anyway, lots of stuff is made out of animals where it's not really that obvious. If you're not eating whole mussels, you think, oh, I'm not involved. But our society, unfortunately or fortunately, uses a lot of products that come from animal sources, and then that moment where they see, okay, so a steel rod goes into this animal's head in order for it to be made into lipsel and pork chops. That's what is profound. And so yeah, we encourage, we don't want any eco-terrorism or vandalism. So we don't want to open the doors to have people that are really, really upset, that haven't sat with the idea that society, whether you like it or not, does consume animal products. But folks that are sort of in the industry and want to see, I think it's been an important part of the work that we've done, maybe more important than the economics of running a meat shop or the economics of Kevin's filming. It's opening people's eyes and minds to where food comes from. And then that appreciation may translate down the road into how they shop or the activities they pursue. So maybe golf is switched out for a hunting trip or a fishing trip.
Hopefully.
I think it's good. As you've seen through
Yeah.
Silvercore, I'm positive that the folks that take the firearms training course that Travis puts together, maybe they're there because they want to buy a wicked shotgun because they saw it in a video game that was wicked cool. But I think that, like, oh, that's cool. But we know a lot of gun collectors that have never been hunting. I'd
Yeah.
say any weekend at Cabela's, especially pre-Christmas, you're like, there are thousands of guns being sold today, and these guys will will never. Just like yeah. The number of camo outfits that leave a wholesale or a retail sporting goods store is preposterous because the back roads that I hunt on aren't much busier than they've been.
No.
Yeah.
No. I think any way to get people to just be more conscious of the decisions that they make in the store and their purchases they make, how much power they have, right? Like, man, I don't know if no, you know what? I didn't. When my kids were young, like quite young, Travis and I brought them along with us when we went to a friend who raised pork for us, and we were going up there to kill the pig and then butcher it. And we wanted the kids to see because I wanted them to be aware of the meat on their plate, what that meant, and so they weren't cavalier about it, right? Like they're friends that when they're older didn't understand or comprehend that like chicken fingers came from a chicken. Like even it was called chicken, but they hadn't connected that animal is a part of like this is a chicken finger. It came from that animal. They in grade 5 or 6, they still hadn't put that together. So I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted them to be very conscious and aware. And I was surprised. I was expecting tears and there's nothing. It's normal. If you introduce it to them at a young age and you're respectful about it, it's just, this is how it is. We get it in our heads that it is unnatural and it's scary and it's sad and it's traumatic and all these things. And it really doesn't have to be, right? Like, I think the more it's hard. I like people crying after they shoot their first animal is I think a totally normal experience because
Yeah.
it's a massive thing. You've killed something, you've taken the life of something, but I think it's so important, especially for kids, to get them in there and like see these things. So
100%. That was the same for us. We took it a step further and bought a farm, and then the slaughterhouse. Like we just
Yeah.
kept going deeper.
Yeah,
Like we
there
were
you go.
addicted to the process. But yeah, milk a cow, collect a warm egg. Probably like if a listener were like, yeah, that's fine. Jeff is clearly not right in the head, and what he and his family did. And I'm never going to do that. But so what can I do? And I think growing a garden, and a garden can be some dirt in a pot on your balcony if you're living in an apartment or condo, and then just being cognizant and thinking about what makes this plant that I'm growing happy, and then what makes it taste better, and then what else does this affect? You can learn a lot just from sort of the gateway planting in soil and changing the quality of the soil and the way that nutrition and sunlight affects plants. The next step, the gateway animal for sure remains the chicken. The humble chicken, a laying hen, can be had for $14 to $25, even if you only had one hen. And then you start thinking about, wait a minute, she lays more eggs or more frequently when I do blank. And then the eggs are more yellow. The yolks in the eggs are more yellow or richer tasting when I feed this animal blank. And then you're like, wait a minute, I just read a thing about trimming beaks on battery raised cage birds. What's that about? And then you're like,
Oh
wait a
God.
minute. Yeah. When you have a chicken in
Don't
front of you.
Google it.
No. And that's a lot of that is really hidden. And I would say also as a consumer, whether it's of plastic inflatable pool products, all the way to toys and Barbies or whatever. It's important to sort of, if the industry doesn't show you behind the wall, behind the curtain, there's probably a reason for that. And so if that hog farm, not the one of your friends and a half dozen pigs or whatever on their farm, that they encourage people to come and check things out if they have the time, when they have the time. But probably the million hog barns or whatever, they're producing millions of pigs a year, or 3,000 pigs in one school gymnasium sized building. They probably don't invite visitors because it's not the prettiest. And some of the stories, like just being in this industry, I do have a backstage pass to a lot of things that aren't even okay to talk about. We could talk about it off air, you know? But there are horrific stories of things that happen in an industry obsessed with profit, and clearly it's just a corporation. I'm not inventing anything, and neither did the world of meat or industrial meat. They didn't invent anything that wasn't already laid out by the people that invented corporate personhood. And the priority of corporations is profit. And my wife has often said, just as an armchair philosopher, she said, food that comes from living things shouldn't have ever been commodified or traded for money. It should only be traded for other goods,
Yeah.
because as soon as money is sort of the common denominator, then the treatment of the animal or plant, or soil, the living soil, gets degraded.
Yeah.
Shouldn't exchange money for food if at all possible. And that's maybe a leaving thought. Like, hey, that guy has crab apples in his crab apple tree. He's not doing anything with them. Maybe I could trade some marijuana that I just grew on legally,
Yeah.
which we don't grow marijuana. We probably should, because with a house full of kids, we could probably get a lot of licenses for a lot of plants. I don't know. But if I grew something that I think is particularly good, and that person so waste streams are a conversation. If I have a lot of something, say I just killed a moose, the sharing circles before refrigeration, where a community would knock a beef on the head, and then 10 families would butcher it, and 10 families would go home with enough beef that they could salt or keep in an ice house for a while. And then it was the next family's turn. I really like those sort of concepts of what people did before greed and profit had sort of permeated every aspect of human life. How did people share, and how did people share in the bounty of the natural harvest? Robin Wall Kimmerer's the braiding sweetgrass was like a fundamental text on what I consider a supremely advanced culture of Aboriginal First Peoples that lived on this continent in what we consider, like, we tell ourselves it must have been horrible times, but I think that advanced culture found a way to live without leaving a mark on the planet, and yet they consumed and created art. So that means that, man, people were getting enough food and living comfortably enough to do art and have culture. That's sort of a written tradition. Culture comes and invades and says, well, that was a less advanced culture, and what horrible people. But I think that's the opposite is true. And those people that survived in North America were thriving in a way that sort of the Western colonialists couldn't even comprehend when they came with their guns, germs, and steel. And if you spend some time hunting and harvesting and really listening in a silent forest, listening and reflecting on the bounty of what nature provides, or what the entire ecology provides for us, where sun meets grass, then wealth is truly born where the sun hits the soil. Create some green stuff, animals eat green stuff, and then you have an abundance of suet.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Circle back to suet.
Yeah, that's right. It's all about suet.
It's all about suet.
Our animals have a pretty good freaking life if it's been able to pack fat around its kidneys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why is that so hard for butchers to understand? Come on.
Right?
That's where suet comes from.
Yeah. How can they not get that?
I don't know. Maybe there's not a big market for suet these days, but
it depends. It comes in circles, like it's in certain circles, and if it depends on who you surround yourself with, and like-minded people do find each other. I wish, in this day and age, it should be super easy. I would love to see no waste leaving our plant at all. I love Canada's the diversity and multiculturalism means that there's someone from somewhere on this planet within a few degrees of separation that has figured out how to recently, or maybe one generation ago only, where they figured out and remember how to eat every part of every animal, and so that guys like me aren't throwing out 4 to 6 tons of scrap, guts, hides, heads, bones, and waste every week. And that's what hurts me the most, and we've invested considerable time, effort, and energy into learning how to eat those things, like beef tripe.
Yep. I love it.
Yeah, it's absolutely chewy noodles.
Yeah.
If you prepare it right, it's completely edible, and it's shocking how good it can be, even after failing 3 or 4 times and stinking up the house, where my kids...
It smells like wet dog.
It can be the worst experience. I had some horrible trials of eating certain things. And then by exploring or being willing to, read more and learn more and dig a little bit deeper, and ordering weird things on at restaurants, we took kind of a Chinese style approach with peanut butter as a flavor and fish sauce as a flavor on chewy noodles. And I jumped for joy when I achieved the chewy noodle texture and a benign flavor that didn't taste like beef guts or beef stomach contents, but just tasted like a chewy noodle out of the honeycomb tripe out of a beef. And I'm like, I've won the game. We can now eat tripe until our heart's content, because it oftentimes gets thrown out.
Yeah. And well, so if you were to design the perfect butcher case and set it up as you would want people to consume the whole animal, what would that look like? Like if someone were to walk into a butcher store and you're like, I don't want it to all be fillets.
Yeah, that's funny. I've had so many dreams. So we did with Modest Meats, we had a retail butcher case, and despite if I had the deepest pockets in the world, I could hold on financially long enough to have the case to look the way that I want it to look, and then to slowly bring customers along to eating the way that I would encourage them to eat. But it takes a lot of education, a lot of patience, education, outreach, a lot of promotional dinners, a lot of educational butchery seminars that don't necessarily exclude people that just happen to be poor. So I restaurants that serve a lot of nouveau concept food like offal tend to have a high sticker price to get in. And so, but we don't need only the elite eating veal brains. We need the elite eating veal brains, but also everybody eating veal brains. So we can't sort of price it out of the market. So I think in the exploration with Modest Meats is that we couldn't hold on long enough financially for folks with sort of no exposure to even where animals or where meat comes from, and that they come from animals in the public education system. They don't have time for that. They don't have funding for that. They don't have outreach and specialty teachers in home economics for that. It's usually a burnt out phys ed teacher is teaching, foods with no spares and no blocks. Yeah. So it does take someone with deep pockets, I think, to hold out and offer tripe in the display case and put on how to cook with tripe. For a $30, show up and I'll show you how to cook with tripe. But a lot of those, even someone asked me, a cousin of mine said, "Hey, are you doing butchery courses this year?" And I said, "Well, we're going through a big renovation in the spring, but we'll resume again late spring." She said, "Great, because Nate's charging $1,000 for introduction to butchering your deer." And I'm like, that is the opposite people that you want at your course.
That's
because
crazy.
If you have $1,000 for a 6-hour course or a 2-day course at Nate, then why are you hunting deer?
It makes me think of the people that come into our hunter ed courses and they're like, especially after COVID, I meat is so expensive. I just want to get cheap meat for my family. I'm like, so you're hunting?
Yeah, not exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's a misnomer that, hunted meat would be the cheapest meat. And no, it takes years of practice. A lot of guys too. I have that too. It's like a young person starts hunting and doesn't get their deer in the first year. And they put 2 weekends into this. And I'm saying it could take you 100 hours before you get a chance at a shot on a deer. And you can do 99% of the steps correctly. And if you flinch when you pull the trigger, you need to invest another, 40 or 100 hours to getting in that position to shoot a deer again. But yeah, unfortunately, social media makes people think that you just kill a deer every 10 minutes. It's just a walk out and shoot an animal.
Yeah, deers are super stupid. They don't have a great sense of smell or sight or hearing or anything. They're
Absolutely.
just
you can buy your way into being a successful hunter, which is absolutely the worst thing to tell hunters.
Yes, exactly.
Spend more money than that.
Yeah.
And it's endemic. And also I find myself ego and materialism is not, we're not devoid of that. Even living rurally with little exposure to stores and marketing, still, I'm I think I need a better scope. And my wife is the voice. I call her the voice of reason. That's like her handle. That's her nickname. The voice of reason, just sitting on my shoulder, saying like, "Why? Don't? Aren't you successful? Like, is your gear worn out? Is your rifle worn out yet? No. Is the glass on your rifle worn out yet? Well, also no. So do you have a problem hitting targets at within lethal range? I'm like, absolutely no. I'm on a really good kill streak at the moment. But we're kind of taught to like it's soothing to consume.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I had this conversation the other day with Hank Shaw was on the podcast, and I was
Love
telling him,
Hank.
Hank's the best.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
We were talking about the new Beretta AX 800, and it's like, I don't know if you've seen the shotgun, but it's gorgeous. And I have a beautiful 400. I do not need a new shotgun, but I want a new shotgun because this new one is, oh my God, it's gorgeous. But anyone that's listening, check out the 800. It's pretty. It's a pretty shotgun. But
oh man,
yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to
it's
look.
Stunning.
But
yeah, just take a peek.
It's
gorgeous.
More time. Success in the field, at least from my perspective, is more. So wear down more souls on boots, like new hunters and new people that are meat, like self-provisioning, meat curious. Buy a range pass, like at a gun range, and buy ammunition. And then I would put in a plug for a place, Intersurplus in Quebec. I didn't know that such a thing existed, but they sell World War II era rifles for hunting and sporterized rifles from the $300 to $600 range. They're wooden stock, like iron peep sights in traditional European calibers, like 6.5 by 55 Swede.
Oh yeah,
which I have my eye on one with great big target 6.5 by 55 Swede, $500. And but you can get into a 30-06 Husqvarna 30-06 for I think $300 or $400, and it's a Canadian company called Intersurplus, I think .ca or intersurplus.com. Yeah, so as to not get swept up in the hypercapitalism or hyperconsumption of buying a $2,000 rifle that you don't know if you're going to use it, you don't know if you're going to enjoy hunting. But I once said to Kevin that there were enough small arms manufactured on this planet to last the planet the rest of eternity during the great wars of World War I and World War II. And those rifles are as adequate you need to hunt every big game species on the planet. They don't need to they can stop making rifles. And this isn't really good for sponsorship.
No.
I cut meat.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying out when we were in Sweden with Norma, we to roll it back to companies we love and believe in. They had these super cool old World War I, World War II rifles we were shooting. God, they were gorgeous. Yeah. They were so nice to shoot. It was stunning. And Norma makes ammunition for those too. So, no, they're great.
So I switched from American Whitetail Hunter Hornady in my 243 to Norma because of your Norma posts.
Oh, awesome.
I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be supporting American bullet manufacturers. I can support Swedish bullet manufacturers. And Norma comes at a price. This is not a plug at all. I'm like, holy crap! It's from Sweden and it's cheaper than American ammo. I'm like, well, it can't be as good. But I read everything that I read is like, no, it's as good. And I am 100 grain weight, pointed soft point, lead tip Norma in 243 100 grain weight, like their cheap line, not their target line or whatever. And they're like, it's just a tack driver.
The stuff they shoot in Sweden is like it's harder to get here. They have this new line called Odin that is, oh my God, it's gorgeous. It's those so nice.
Plastic like ballistic tip, I think, right? I think I saw a package.
They're not even here yet. They're releasing soon in Sweden. I think if you're there and you know the guys at Norma, you can get it. But it's totally non-lead. They're pushing everything to non-lead now, and it shoots like right in line with the top ammunition, not even non-lead ammunition. It's like the best of the best, and it's totally non-lead.
I'm a super fan. I love the packaging, great. and the results were like on my target shooting and coyote shooting in the wintertime. I stay sharp by shooting at targets and shooting at coyotes, and I was just stunned that a $50 box, a Canadian $49.99 for this Norma 100 grain weight. I'm waiting for the price to go up. But by price alone, I thought this can't be the best ammunition, or it would be more irregular. That is that different grain weight bullets and misloads and stuff. And I'm like, no, I haven't found any of that. It's the tidiest shooting ammunition that I've shot with consistent shot to shot performance. It sounds like a complete plug. I really don't care who makes my ammo. I guess I got a little political about like anti-American sentiment, but if I can give profits to a company like Norma, I would do that all day long. They're just great, and that was really thanks to you.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Jonas, I don't know if you're listening to this, but
check it out, Jonas. You've got a true believer here.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, we love their stuff. We love the people that work there, the factory. Like it's uncommon to see a company where people really care so much. And it shows up in their product. I mean, it's an easy thing for us.
That's what Travis said. And I thought, if you know the people making it, then and you said the same about Tangent Theta. And I was like trying to justify to Heather why I need a Canadian scope, the best made glass reviewed. I read all about Tangent Theta before you guys, I think you posted a picture. I'm like, oh my God, is that a Tangent Theta 5 to 25? And you're like, absolutely.
Oh yeah, so my Socko.
Yeah. I read all about it. I'm like, my God, glass and ammo is where you should be spending money. And then on the rifles are manufactured almost the same for such a long time that they're more accurate than a human being. Unless you're a competition shooter, or like precision shooting is a different sport than harvesting game. And harvesting game is not precision shooting.
Tangent Theta's, they're another example of a company that's just they're just the best people.
Yeah, that they're nice people. That matters to me as a buyer, even though the scopes are $5,000 to $8,000.
but worth every penny.
You buy one once. I mean,
totally.
Dad said that he has guns from the 70s, and they shoot as flat and accurate as they ever have. And guns from the 70s had a much nicer finish, like deep luster blued and like fancy walnut. So I love those guns, and I dislike the plastic military looking guns. That's not my thing. The militarization of hunting was an Americanization and a fetishist movement that I don't like. I like plaid and not war camo and war weapons. I like plaid and historic weapons. If a hunter can kill a whitetail with an iron sight 30-30, that's a hunting in plaid. That's a hunting god. If you have to be in a full ghillie suit, you're silly. Ghillie is silly. And then the guns designed to look like military is cool. It's like they're cool looking. They're kind of like dress up soldier. But there's a place for those sorts of weapons, and that's be a soldier. Like it's awesome. You get to shoot the coolest. There's a put like guys around the meat cutting table talking about shooting 338 Lapwas to vaporize varmints, and I'm like, that's cool. But if like there's a place for that, and that's not really respecting. It's not really respecting the animal or what I view as the Canadian version of hunting, which was based more on like the voyageurs, the people that settled, sort of the Métis, sort of respect for nature, built around harvesting for food, rather than the pornographication and the militarization of like, look how big this rack is, and
videotaping yourself with night vision goggles, shooting rats running around in a field and making them blow up. Yeah.
I like rats going away. So I do. Certain varmints need to be but yeah, I think militarizing and it's easy to do because those of us with a bit of testosterone in our blood, we see guys shooting fully automatic rifles out of helicopters, and you're like, that's the pinnacle of hunting. And I think that Canada needs another Jim Shockey, like a young Jim Shockey. I don't know who that guy is, or girl. It should be a woman, actually. Eva Shockey was pretty cool. I don't know. She just maybe isn't as active on socials anymore. But I kind of like the Canadian style of hunting that's more built in food harvesting and tradition than the militarization of porn. $30 in 30 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
How that's akin to World Wrestling sort of promotion. Don't like it. Camouflage toilet seats. We always laugh, at the slaughterhouse. A guy will drive up in a gigantic diesel truck with dual wheels, and it's so loud. And he gets out during hunting season in a full camouflage outfit with like camouflage paint. He's like, "Are you guys taking deer?" No, we're full. And then he says, but why? Have you got a deer dead now? No, but I'm going hunting, so I'll be back later today with a deer. And you're like, yeah, okay.
Oh,
When you get your deer,
yeah.
but he's wearing camo in the truck. That's the joke. And a lot of trunters, like
I've never heard that term before. That's awesome.
that's a Kevin and Jeff original.
I
Kevin
love
Costell
that.
and Jeff Singer were like,
I
shall we
love
go
that.
for a trunt? Or do you want to put a maneuver boots on ground? And it's like, I think it's cold. So let's just trunt.
Yeah, that's
Let's just
awesome.
trunt in a giant pickup truck. But make sure you're wearing your camo.
But then Kevin can take his boots off, so he's ready to like stalk in and sock feet, right?
He did get like psychotic and got a lot of thorns and thistles in his in his feet. But valid. And that is exploring like a more traditional and or frontier bush mountain man / Aboriginal approach. That when you work with nature and you do common sense things, you don't need that $1,000 pair of boots in order to go. I think that a lot of young people in the pursuit, it exists in livestock production as well. You go into the livestock productions, the store, and you think, oh my God, look at all this equipment I must need in order to own a cow, or look at all these fishing lures. I think that going fishing must be the most daunting thing for someone who hasn't grown up fishing, because when you go into a sporting goods store and you look at the thousands and thousands of lures, you're like, this is impossible. It's too complex for me to figure this out. Where fishing should be the simplest thing in the world, and everyone with 25 cents and like a length of dental floss and like a hook and a worm should be fishing. In order to put them in touch with nature and where food comes from, they should be able to do that.
I mean, it doesn't help when stores that shall not be named, but large, big box stores that I don't like to support. I like my local, Michael and
Yes.
Young, but these large stores, you go in there and you're like, who's bass fishing here? Like, why are they selling all this crap? You have like, when they opened up near us, they have like bass fishing boats here. It's like, you know where the store's located, right? Like, we tend to fish for salmon around here and trout in the river and blah, 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 right? Like, no one's bass fishing.
It's
doesn't help.
comical, and it's comical to the point of just sad.
Yeah.
Where they've commodified the activity so completely that they don't even know, and they're making so much profit, basically selling camouflage blankets and home decor, like in the look of antlers, the antler decor world, and gun safes for people that don't go to the range. But they've gone so far as to commodify the activity itself and to say that doesn't matter. We make best margin on bass boats, push bass boats into BC on the Pacific fucking Ocean. And you're like, what, guys, what are you doing? Tree stands. I grab, young new hunters, and I just grab by the cuff of the shirt and I just slap them like that. There's a Batman and Robin meme of Batman someone slapping someone, but Batman and Robin. And it's like, tree stand hunting is different in America. And tree stand hunting may not be as valid in Canada. And there are huge geographical differences, but you really got to go deep into looking at why tree stand hunting is a thing and blind hunting is a thing. And then sort of the history of crown land and public land in Canada and why those things are different. Yeah. But the store, it doesn't matter. Those things cost, that's $80 US to buy in China, and $800 on the fake tree displays at your, you know what I mean? And you're like, what are people doing? That's a great way to get cold because we have winter here.
Yeah.
It's not.
And it's a, not to rant too much, but it is like God, you got to support your local store where you know the guys that work there. I would rather go to Reliable Gun or Italian Sporting Goods or Stillwater Sports, where I know I can call Stillwater Sports and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And the guy that works there is Jens, and he says, "Hey, Tiff, how's it going?" Right? Like he knows my voice. And I go into these other big box stores. Those guys don't even hunt. They don't know what they're talking about. They're going to sell you crap you don't need. Go to your local store. That's my rant.
And we'll make like they do know,
Yeah.
I think,
Totally.
But now let's tie it all back to like also meat.
Yeah.
So if there's a 17-year-old kid that literally, because of the nature of our economy at the moment, that kid has never bought a steak. Mm-hmm. He's never eaten a steak, but he's told he read the one-page trainer on how to sell steak at his meat portioning store. So that kid has no clue what he's saying, but he'll lie to you and tell you what the sales brochure that he read that morning, because they want to hit sales quota, so he gets an extra buck an hour, or whatever, however it works. But I feel that whether it's at a commodified gun counter pushing guns or a commodified meat shop, it's very similar in that sort of a cultural movement of populism and embracing ignorance and hating on or vilifying intellectualism and literacy is costing us more cases of cancer and accidental death and dismemberment than ever before, probably in history. We should have the most knowledgeable folks that have ever walked the face of the planet, and I don't think that's the case because of a rise in populism and anti-intellectualism. I think it's like at the key. Where folks don't understand when they're being bullshitted to. They don't even have the gear upstairs to say, what is this person's motivation? Is it customer service and making sure that I have a great interaction, like you say, in your independently owned sporting goods store or butcher shop? Or is this guy's motivation to make more sales or make profit? And that, it features everywhere, whether it's a car dealership. If you know someone, as I get older and my hair turns grayer and grayer, you find that kind of knowing a guy, I got a guy, or I know this woman and she's been running a plumbing business for 20 years. I'm not going to get the runaround or told something incorrect.
Totally. They're not going to take advantage of your ignorance, right? Yeah. They've got respect for themselves and what they do, and they don't need to do that.
Yeah, valuing the trade that you're a part of is, it shouldn't be as rare as it is. But once you find a good auto mechanic or a good meat person or cheese person, you cling to that cheese person, someone who's truly passionate and has invested something in learning the art of that craft.
Now, taking a complete right turn, but on the topic of bullshit, I have a question for you. I've been seeing this. I've been seeing this floating around, and I'm genuinely curious. Ted Nugent has been posting videos about CWD, how it's a scam, how it started with the Colorado Department of Wildlife injecting scrapies from sheep into mule deer back in like the 60s or something like that. And I noticed today online, Travis sent me a video about Missouri Fish and Game Department has pulled back requirements for CWD testing, and there seems to be some back and forth on CWD. Do you have any knowledge on that and the reality of it? And is it something, because it's just kind of popped into BC in the last couple of years? Yes. I know you guys have had it there in Alberta for a while. Is it something that is overblown, or is it a real concern?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, we need another hour.
I know,
just for this topic alone. Yeah. But yeah, chronic wasting in wild ungulate populations has an overlap in BSE, mad cow disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, mad cow disease. BSE has affected the Alberta market. We've owned the slaughterhouse long enough for BSE I think we just bought in 2010, and that was like post-outbreak of BSE in animals for consumption in Canada. And at the time, the US and Europe were banning imports of Canadian beef because certain animals were tested hot for BSE, mad cow disease. So there's an overlap, without a doubt, with chronic wasting in wild ungulate populations that I'm intensely interested in and affected at a very visceral level, because we processed an elk last year for my cousin who's a pilot for Air Canada. He harvested a big bull elk in central Alberta, Stettler, and submitted the head for testing and the carcass to our slaughterhouse. We cut it and wrapped it. And then we were like calling him, come, he lives near Calgary. We're like, your elk's ready, come get it. He's like, Jeff, it tested hot for chronic wasting. Oh, and I'm like, well, holy shit. And he was like, holy shit. So we were kind of like, well, what do we do? He's a well-read fella. He's married to my cousin, who is a naturopathic doctor. So we had an intelligent discussion from the perspective of a doctor, an avid hunter, and a meat cutter. these are the things that public health authorities are saying. That is, dispose of it in like only in a landfill. This isn't dog food. This isn't anything that you want to put back into nature. It goes to a landfill, class 1 or class 2 landfill, that's plastic lined to prevent this meat from getting back into the population, because we want to eliminate or avoid the spread of anything that may be related to chronic wasting. Now, that's all true. Handle with the most, like be as secure and safe as possible, because if you know anyone who may have contracted, who may have eaten chronic wasting or BSE affected meat and then contracted the human variant, which is Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, in a bizarre twist of fate, Kevin Koswan has an uncle that happened to have died from Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in Alberta. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And, you can Google Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease.
It's horrible.
It is an awful way to die. So chronic wasting, whether it's a beautiful little woodland animal, a cow in a feed yard or on pasture, or your uncle, it's a brutal, brutal disease. So in the here and now, in real time, we had to decide, what do we do with the elk? So we threw it out. It went to a landfill after we put in the time to harvest, skin, gut, quarter, cut into steaks. We had jerky and sausage with the order, and all that went into the garbage. So to play it on the safe side. And that's with the advice of my cousin, naturopathic doctor. So that's what I would do. Treat it seriously. We do not want to put wildlife at an increased risk of any kind of horrible disease. So as responsible, ethical hunters, farmers, and meat lovers, we dispose of it. I think that then for other folks that aren't related to a naturopathic doctor, maybe don't have those resources, I would kind of look at the source of news, where it's coming from, and follow the money. So any statement made, I know that it sounds maybe conspiratorial of me to say this, but absolutely, big commodified beef, the last thing in the world they want is to have to deal with an endemic disease that puts humans at risk. Because they care about humans so much. I'm like, well, kind of. But
Plus
they
meat
really,
to sell.
they really care about their shareholders' value, because on any that's absolutely, and that's great. It's great that they know what their number one thing is, and that's making profit. As a corporation, that's your number one objective, is to provide returns for shareholders. And so if the entire way that you process, present, package, distribute, the whole value chain is based on high numbers, high volumes, low margins, then if something icky comes up, like, oh shit, we shouldn't feed animal brains to ruminant animals, because who would have thought that could create some diseases in the animals eating the inedible for human consumption parts of their brothers and sisters. That is exactly why there was a problem. It was traced by scientists who I fully believe in science and the scientific process. Scientists said, hey, you shouldn't feed brains of cows to cows, and you shouldn't feed brains of sheep to sheep. We also advise not feeding the brains of pigs to pigs. And so this is one of those dirty secrets in the industry in the pre-2010 or 12 or something. Rendered material that was inedible in the human food chain, and not valuable for the pet food chain. So the lowest of the low would get included in the livestock food chain. And so how do you get beef to finish faster? You feed them protein. Oh, protein in barley, right? And then protein in barley, right? Well, is there a lower grade protein that we could feed cattle to get their fat protein and muscle, like building muscles, these incredible hulks of cattle? Is there a way we could do that faster? And for sure, by providing the lowest cost protein that there is on Earth. And that's like insects, right? No.
God.
No, that's just the waste. The stuff that didn't make the grade for pet food would be then rendered and turned into protein for livestock feed. So anyway, that was the whole birth of the crisis of chronic waste, or not chronic wasting, but BSE in cattle here in North America. When it comes to wild ungulate populations, of course, there are wild ungulate ranches, and there are wild feral pigs, and there are pigs that are fed outdoors, and they're fed pelletized ration. And then so birds can come and eat out of that trough, and other animals can come and eat out of that trough. And elk that are fed pelletized rations can jump fences and breed through fences. It's amazing. A bull elk is like a teenage boy. And we found that in keeping animals, not everything sort of stays within the fence and everything is controlled. It's not nearly as controlled as people that aren't experienced with livestock might think. And so could there be some escape into wild populations? Like, absolutely yes. And then is that serious? And you can read a lot of scientific reports to decide for yourself. Number one, just believe in science and then read. And most people don't want to do that. They want to listen to online influencers, people they really trust, people with really very good looking, people with really nice clothes that drive Lamborghinis, give a lot of the medical advice to the population, driven by populism and hyperconsumption, which I disagree with all that, if you hadn't noticed.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, if Kylie Jenner says that chronic wasting is not a thing, then probably 90% of people will be like, it's not a thing. It's fake.
Well, she knows, right? She knows.
Not at all. Not even a little bit. But yeah, read some books and all that. And then I would say, okay, so a deer can be exposed to chronic wasting and not show the symptoms of chronic wasting. And then a deer can be exposed to chronic wasting and then show the symptoms of chronic wasting. And a hunter might get the hunch that deer, there's something not right about it. It's drooling, it's walking in circles. It wins you and it doesn't bolt. It's not behaving like a normal deer. Those are some clues that it might be suffering from a brain eating itself disease, a brain wasting disease. But taking a healthy animal and turning its head into a responsible system that Alberta has, and I think BC does too. Yep. You send in a sample, either the whole head or a part of the brain that you scrape, and there's a little sample. It's all free to the public here.
Yep. Here too.
And then they test it for chronic wasting. So just because that animal has chronic, CWD present, chronic wasting disease, I think there's a scientific name for it in ungulates that's jumping out of my mind. So they could test positive. And then not 100% of people that consume meat from an animal that was CWD positive then develop anything at all. So it's just it's a statistics game. And or maybe a toss of the dice. So the likelihood is low that an animal has it. If an animal has it, the likelihood is low that the animal will die from it. And I read a study recently, or an abstract of a study, that said that there's a scientific resistance, like there's a genetic marker on certain populations of mule deer in southern BC that are affected, and then they've developed a resistance to dying from that chronic wasting disease, which is really interesting.
Weird.
And then I would believe that with 8 billion people on the 8 billion human beings, there's a lot of genetic variability where one person could eat the spinal cord out of or the brain out of a chronic wasting disease animal and be fine, and the next person could immediately develop Creutzfeldt-Jakob. But is it worth it? So even if and in life, kind of things, we do a lot of dangerous things in life, and I often say, what's the worst possible outcome? And if that's like an agonizing death, then even though the percent likelihood of it affecting me is 1 in 1,000, less than 1%, I still will avoid that activity because agonizing death, low likelihood. It's almost you can multiply it in your head that like I'm driving on this lake to go ice fishing and there's only 6 inches of ice. So the worst thing that can happen is this, and then the likelihood of it happening is that, and like, am I willing to take that risk? So each person can assess. The more information they're armed with from scientific resources, not Ted Nugent or absolutely avoid, I would advise people to avoid, if it's in a reel or on TikTok, it's almost certainly not news or not based on any science. Almost 100%. I'd say 90.
That's where I get all my news from.
Yeah,
Come
exactly,
on.
right? Yeah. I'd say 98% of it, if someone's bothered to make a reel about it, it's just clickbait. But if you have to dig for it, on the other hand, if you have to Google, like type in 3 words like chronic wasting research in southern BC, if you had to do all that work of typing 4 words into the Google machine and a scientific report comes from a respected third-party evaluated publication like Nature magazine, now that you have to do a smidgen of work to get, it's probably a renowned researcher, and that's probably more likely to be news than something that's on social media. you can edit this all down to me saying the likelihood times the worst case scenario is how you should evaluate whether or not you eat a deer that tests hot.
Yeah.
Whether you hunt deer or hunt wild game in an area that is hot or known to be hot, and also how you feel about BSE and BSE testing in your other proteins, your supermarket proteins.
Yeah.
Interesting detail in exploring BSE and having to make sort of these decisions at the slaughterhouse level. I found out that at the time that Alberta was sort of sanctioned and not able to export beef to the United States, a little country called the United Kingdom did do tests and had been doing tests on 100% of cattle slaughtered. So every beef that was slaughtered in the UK at the time, in the early 2010s to 2015s, every beef that was slaughtered for human consumption was required to test negative for BSE.
Really?
In Canada, let's not test. So were tests available? Yes. Veterinary tests were available in Canada, on Earth, in the UK, everywhere in the world. You could buy a test to test the brain of cattle fit for human consumption. And the test was something like $80. And so in Canada, it wasn't decided that your kids were worth testing for this disease, the health of your kids. But in the United Kingdom and a lot of European Union nations, they were tested. 100% of cattle were tested as part of just public health. And like, so they was kind of like, put that in your pipe and smoke it. And you're like, well, are Canadian kids or the health of you, the risk to you, is that lower than for British kids? And I'm like, I don't know. But big beef and big beef who control, like, it costs a lot of money because oftentimes the Canadian Food Inspection Agency reaction to a test, like a hot test, would be euthanizing an entire herd of cattle, which would put the farmer almost certainly put a farmer out of business and put an entire food supply at risk and affect international trade. It would cost billionaires hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, they'd have to fire one of their maids. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's like what's that? Schrodinger's I can't say the word. But the thing, experiment with the cat when you open the door, it's like, is the cat there or not? They're just like, I'm just not going to open the door. The cat's not there.
They didn't want to see. Yeah. Scooby-Doo did something like that.
Yeah.
You know, you open the door and there's a monster.
Yeah.
And then you just
totally. No monster. We're all good.
You just close the door and like, okay, well, we don't want to deal with that. Yeah, the sort of the shoot, shovel, shut up sort of mantra around BSE in Alberta was it had gravity. It affected me. I'm like, what? Where do you stand and why? And like, so would you buy a beef? So you're going to buy a side of beef from me, and because we've had this conversation and the blah blah blah, and then I have access to test it. Do you want to test it for BSE?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how much? I'm like, $80. So, and you'd say, yeah, I'm going to feed this to my kids. I think I do want to test. Like, and then you know that some tests test false positive and some tests test false negative. I could say if it tests positive, I'll test it a second time. And then then it's like in the case of Brendan's elk that tested positive, and that was for free because wild game is tested for free. So in a weird way, wild game is safer than other Canadian red meat food products because wild game, the harvester has the option of testing that for chronic wasting. Whereas for beef, you generally don't have that option at all. You can't go to Costco will tell you if it's AA or AAA graded, but not tested negative or tested positive, because it would just cost the industry good. Like, you want to, like, they make you believe it would cost you millions, the whole industry would collapse. And like, no, because the industry is so profitable, the commodified food industry, it would cost a lot of money compared to your bank account, but it wouldn't cost a lot of money. It'd be a tiny percentage of the total, the 3 or 4 companies that control all meat in North America. It would cost them a few percentage points, but they could not afford that. But for some reason in Britain, the companies that produce meat did test, or the European Union said, we don't want to eat this unless it is tested. So similar to your observation when you and Travis visited Sweden, like their perspective on hunting and the sorts of animals they would harvest is different from the way that North America treats its food industries. And what's valuable to us is kind of different what's valuable to other people in the world.
Yeah, North America's a special kind of special kind of crazy, I find, with food sometimes. Some of the things that we're allowed to consume, and in Europe, you're not allowed. It's not food, right? They just stick it in everything here. And it's, it encourages me to hunt and forage and grow my own vegetables and do all those things so I have control over it and know what's in it.
I agree totally. The beginning is flavor, and then the more you you're like, whoa, how come this carrot or this apple has more flavor?
Oh, totally.
You start to learn about seasonality, and you start to learn about quality, and then you start to learn about additives and preservatives and the perversion of food by big business.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that might be a good place to stop. Unless,
Sure. Yeah, I like it.
was there anything else you wanted to chat about, or?
No, I love having these sorts of conversations on or off air. You're part of the community, and I think that those of us that care to learn about food and food harvesting, like this is not me being canned. This is just me being candid. Is man, it's I miss you. I miss you guys. We need more of you guys in the world, and I think that if we were to use this technology for this exact purpose, for people of a like stripe to sort of connect and unite and say, hey, I could get fish off you guys. Next time I'm driving through to take a kid to Victoria, I should bring a cooler or two full of like crazy beef fines. Awful, and then also some strip loins.
Yep.
And then trade for what you're good at getting, like wild game or black-tailed deer I've never eaten. And then certainly the ocean bounty is insane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll do that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Next time you come through, let us know. And
we generally do. We try, like there's a stop, friends of ours in the Okanagan, we called it trade routes. This joke about, hey, and this is Aboriginal culture tie-in too. These fucking people, somehow people in the prairies had salt. And then somehow Haida Indians had, and that's not the right word, Haida First Nations had fucking bison. And you're like, there are mountain passes that my fucking car doesn't like driving. And the food culture of these absolute boss-ass people, the First Nations, like shells and beadwork in prairies, Aboriginal people. And you're like, that's a shell. And like you and I would be like, oh, who cares? Kevin and I were on an island chain. We did a kayaking trip in one of the seasons. And we were up out of Telegraph Cove. And we went east to a National Historic Site where these beaches were made out of clam shells.
Yeah.
But it was like 10,000 years of people, First Nations people celebrating. And they ate so many clams there that the beaches were 15 feet deep of clamshell, of like shucked clams. And we're like, man.
They call those middens or something
middens,
like that. Yeah, that's cool.
So we camped on a midden beach, and it's like this white, like it's weird. It's broken down shells. Anyway, it just gave us a sense, like a lived sense, sleeping on it, like sleeping on the midden beach. And we're like, people knew stuff that we still don't know. Like like they're living a cultural richness that we still don't understand, because just the same, you can go to a museum in Edmonton and see the carapace, like traditional, like their dance outfits. And there's these bits of shell and I'm like, I could not walk to the coast in an entire lifetime. But they then, more anthropologists are saying like, these fucking guys are walking every year or more than once a year.
That's also, that reminds me of my grandpa used to, very much smaller scale, but my grandpa had a buddy named Ernie, and on the weekend they would go out, they'd buy a wheel of like cheddar cheese or something from a local shop in Carrisdale, and they would cut it up into pieces, and they'd go to all their friends and they would trade like a piece of cheese for something else, and they'd just visit all their friends for the whole weekend and just trade the cheese for other stuff.
Cheese wheel. That was kind of like the beef, they call it the beef circle of breaking down beef pre-refrigeration. But another neat idea that might be worth a snippet in your production is if you know a butcher or a baker, home gardener, home butcher, whatever, or a professional, you know that the best stuff that person has comes out among friends.
Oh yeah.
It's not for sale. It never was for sale. And nor should it ever be for sale. So if I harvest an animal that we've grown on our own farm and it's extraordinary, that eye of round goes into Brazola into my cellar, And that Brazola it never hits any market shelf. It never gets changed. It never gets exchanged for something as shallow and pathetic as money. I don't want your money. The best whiskey, the best wine comes from the vinter's cellar, because it was off spec. It didn't meet homogeneity requirements. And so that's what I want to eat. And like, you can trade it for something that's not money.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
there's never been a single turkey or chicken served in my house that's made it to the table that still has the oysters attached to it.
Exactly.
They're all
Yeah. Yeah. That's when
Pop
you're eating the,
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
right. Yeah.
No, 100%.
Cool,
Well,
cool.
I'm going to let you go so she
Sure.
doesn't come back in and yell at you
That's
for
great.
her.
I know I can gush. I can really gush on these topics, but I appreciate you including me in your cool project.